This is history, the future mystery. This moment is the gift. Every second
Woohoo! Welcome. It's Dr. Sarah Larsen in the house. And in studio with me, I've got my beautiful miracle maker husband, Greg Larsen.
Welcome, miracle makers. Yay.
We are so grateful that you're with us. It's been such an interesting few days for me. I went through a little bit of a slump, which is really odd for me. It's really, really odd. Yesterday I got home from work and I was all tearful and I was trying to figure the energy out. Where were these tears coming from? Were they even my feelings that I was feeling? And then somehow this morning we had a conversation. And I felt inspired as we were researching our guest today, inspired by all of the possibilities, just inspired. And lo and behold, whatever frequency, whatever I was feeling, whatever contraction was present, evaporated, and I was inspired. And you witnessed this, baby.
What I saw, well, although you did have a moment of inspiration this morning, but last night when you got home and we kind of got settled, there happened to be 4 little inspirations in your life.
Oh, yes.
And we're talking about our daughter's dog, which is our granddaughter, Angel, had 4 little puppies, and she's like a Chihuahua size. So these puppies are like little tiny guys.
They are.
And we all sat around the box last night, and you were just like, puppy smiles and puppies and flowers.
And puppy love and puppy everywhere. There's a lot going on in the world right now.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of energy.
An empath and as someone that really, really loves the world that we're living in, there is so much energy around us. At the moment that we're feeling the puppies and we're playing with them, that moment, there's so much happening in each of the homes that are in our neighborhood. There's so much happening across the country, across the world. We're so grateful to have the experience that we're having and the vibration, the words and the sounds that come up. And when I was looking this morning at our guest, and I'm so excited, I realized it's a dream come true for me. It's a miracle to have our guest in studio. Years ago, I bought cards, and on the cards was this peace dove made by people, and they were holiday greeting cards. And I now believe they were, and I set the intention maybe 5-6 years ago to meet the person that organized that beautiful image of doves. And I believe that might be the person sitting in studio with us. We're all going to find out together. In studio, we have Steve Robertson. He is with To Unite All. His mission is to bring peace all over the world. He's a racer, a CEO, a brilliant producer, and he produces concerts and albums and events that are designed to create the vibration of peace in the Middle East especially. Welcome, Steve Robertson.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As we were driving in, Steve and I were on the telephone. I said, Steve, we're your biggest fans. The more we learn about you, the more we're just so excited that you came in and you're with us here in studio. We met at a party, a holiday party, and this holiday party, it was so interesting that one of the first things you said is it's so important to watch your vernacular.
Indeed.
And so I'd love for you to share, we've got great questions for you,
Sure.
but I'd love for you to share that this moment when you recognize another person is in a conversation, like a meaningful, moving, inspiring conversation.
Sure. I'm actually the founder and CEO of an organization called Project Peace on Earth. We're based here in Woodland Hills, California. And I've been studying music and consciousness for almost now 30 years. And that process of exploration led me to really try to understand how consciousness and how form is created as a result of our thoughts and our spoken words. So if we look at the most fundamental aspect of physiology, the first bone to develop in the fetus is the ear bone, as you know as a doctor, and the first sense to develop in the fetus is hearing. The last sense to go when you die is hearing. Music is the only art form where the right and left hemispheres of the brain work simultaneously. And MIT has shown through PET scans that the pineal gland, or what mystics might call the third eye, this is actually the area of the brain that processes music. So as background to this, I spent 11 years writing a thesis paper on the effects of music in consciousness. I met Kitaro when he first landed in North America. I met with Yanni and had a lot of the major record label executives, Peter Bauman from Private Music, Ann Robinson, who started Windham Hill Records on my board, Dan Celine, who started Higher Octave Music on my board, and I was looking to explore and explain to people why I felt certain types of music impacted us in a more spiritually acclimated way. And the distillation of that may be best described in the Sufi master Hazrat Inayat Khan in the 14th century. He wrote the book, The Mysticism of Sound and Music. And in the book he says, people say that the soul, on hearing the song of creation, entered the body, but in reality, the soul itself was the song. And then he goes on to say there's no greater way to attain spiritual enlightenment and or awareness than through music, if only the music is rightly understood. So I have spent, probably 30 years of my life really investigating what this rightly understood music is. There's a film called Copying Beethoven where the actor Ed Harris plays Beethoven, and it's about the relationship he has with a woman who scribes his music, hence the name Copying Beethoven. It's a platonic relationship. However, he's a very dismissive and abusive human being to this very lovely woman who's just trying to help him. And so one day when they're alone, out of guilt and shame, he slams his hand down on the table. He says, "What's the deal? Why do you take this from me? Stand up for yourself." And she begins to weep. And she says, I do this because I hope by being in your presence one day I might be able to write great music like you. And so her words and sincerity so moves him that he sits with her at the table eye to eye, and he now wants to share with her the intimacy of this volition through which the music occurs. And this is what I've been searching for a large part of my life. And he says to her, the vibrations on the ear are the breath of God speaking to man's soul. Music is the language of God. We musicians are as close to God as man can be. We hear his voice, we read his lips, and we give birth to the children of God who sing his praise. That is what musicians are. And, he says, if we are not that, then we are nothing. And I believe this is why these great musicians like Beethoven and Bach and Chopin and Mozart, they would write, as you may know, the Latin initials AMDG at the top of their compositions, which means ad mortem de gloriam, for the greater glory of God.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful gift to really receive this information. Those musicians would also get complete downloads of the songs that were coming in. They would hear them full and then write them down. I think one of the most important things, if someone bounces or doesn't feel connected to the word God, at this moment, I want to invite you to think about
use the word creator, spirit, whatever you wish to use.
Just to be in the mystery of the unknown. If we labeled God as mystery, the unknown forces that acted together to create us. And it's possible to hear for yourself the unknown forces that created us. Unknown in the sense you yourself have not experienced it fully in your consciousness such that you're able to translate it for yourself completely. Musicians, however, hear it and bring the invisible into visible or create the language in a way that can shift our DNA, that can organize the space around us, that can make visible the natural geometries that happen, shapes, vibrations.
We can certainly dive into that. I mean, William Kindler, the great philosopher, probably summarized it quite succinctly. He says, of all of the arts, music is the perfect art because it strikes the soul without the aid of the intellect. And Confucius went so far as to say, if one desires to know whether a kingdom is well governed and if its morals are good or bad, the quality of the music furnishes the answer. So what I have done, in this 11-year process of attempting to describe to doctors at a very high end what I was understanding through music, because a lot of the pioneers of the holistic medical movement, Bernie Siegel, Deepak Chopra, Andrew Weil, Dean Ornish, Larry Dossey, were all talking about how negative emotions created dis-ease in the body, but no one had ever really connected the dot between what Tolstoy said, which was music is the shorthand of emotions. And indeed, probably music is the closest thing to innate communication that we really have. So my belief in the distillation of this 11-year thesis paper that I worked on was, I believe that there are certain musicians, because of their spiritual practice and their devotion, they can tune into what Pythagoras would call the music of the spheres, which are basically a series of frequencies and harmonics which are analogous to what the industrial psychologist Maslow would have called a state of self-actualization, or what certain spiritual teachers like Yogananda or etc. would call a state of self-realization. So in other words, these would be thoughts like love, compassion, forgiveness, empathy, these higher orders of thinking which moves consciousness out of a linear and dualistic right, wrong, good, bad view of the world, and it moves consciousness into a holographic perspective of seeing how everything is lovingly and divinely interconnected. And I believe the soul already operates on this core frequency.
So,
music of the spheres, Om, Amen, Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, Christ consciousness. And that state of being is already within us. So when we experience this music physiologically through the ears and intuitively through the psyche, it is literally as though two computers are talking the same protocol. The law of physics, called the law of sympathetic vibration, dictates the consciousness of the listener. It will have to resonate correspondingly. So in essence, the idea behind what we're doing with Project Peace on Earth and what we have done 3 times, global concerts out to 80 million homes, is to broadcast sacred music, musical prayers for peace, where every single note, every lyric, and every composition is curated from a perspective of giving someone a visceral goosebump experience of their own innate divinity. Because the bottom line, and our litmus test for success is really not, was it a cool concert, as I believe was the case with other events that have occurred. It's really more the following day when someone goes to brush their teeth or comb their hair and they look into the mirror, are they able to see their own divinity? Because if you can't see your own divinity, there's no way that you can see that divinity in the eyes of another. They're just the other. And if you don't witness that divinity in the eyes of another, you can't witness that divinity in the eyes of the animals. And if you don't witness that divinity in the eyes of the animals, you cannot witness that divinity in Mother Earth, who I promise to God knows how to take care of herself. But, however, if we cannot get humanity to hear the cry of a little child who's been raped or had her arm lopped off with a machete just because she's of the wrong tribe, there's no way you're getting humanity to hear the cry of a tree that's being cut down with a chainsaw or an axe, even though it may in fact represent the metaphorical philia of the lungs of Mother Earth.
I think there's so much that you shared, and I want to break it down just a little bit.
Sure.
Music can get us to feel and connect with our innate ability to feel what's within us. Quite often when we go to concerts that are truly, truly moving, we're in tears or we're in rapturous joy. We're in these states. And
look, if you look at the Upanishads, this is the oldest
Yes.
spiritual text on the planet.
Yes.
The Upanishads actually translates into the last song. The Bhagavad Gita means song celestial, and in the Bible, the word actually means primary harmony. This is all done through sound, and the top quantum physicists say it's so. So, as we were discussing earlier, when we're really talking about our words and how we're co-creating, bottom line, we are co-creating nanosecond after nanosecond, right?
we are co-creating nanosecond after nanosecond with the great mystery that some call God, some have other labels for, but these mysterious forces that organize everything at elevated, higher and higher levels. The more that you're able to listen, the more you're able to connect and co-create with that.
Bottom line, and I encourage
Yeah.
viewers and listeners right now, just take a scan of your room that you're
Yes.
sitting in. Without the exception of plant or animal, just name one item that was not first a thought in someone's imagination. This is not magic. This is
Yes.
physics. This is the Heisenberg principle, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But if you look in from a biblical perspective, and this is just one text of many, the Upanishads say, in the beginning was Brahman, and with Brahman
Yes.
was the Word, and Brahman said, the world shall be, and the world came into being. How can you deny that that's not cut out of the same cloth as in the beginning was the Word, and the Word
Yes.
was with God, and God said, let there be light. So let us remember that, the Jesus figure said, greater things I have done, and even the least among you can do greater than I. How else can you interpret this other than I did it, and you can do it,
Yes.
and you can go further than I? However, you must first find, as he says, the kingdom of heaven, which dwelleth within. He says you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven until ye become as a child. So only in that metaphorical state of innocence can you, as it says in Psalms, be still and know that I am God. Only then can you know, and God said, let there be light. And that the Word was made flesh and full of grace and dwelt among us, which is why Einstein states energy and mass are different forms of the same thing. So we are calling into form.
I want to break that down
Sure.
even more. When you said everything in this room was once a thought, indeed, it was a thought. There was a spirit first, then a mental action, then an emotional
Be,
component, and
do,
then there's
have.
a physical part.
Right.
To it. There is for everything in your room, including the room that you're in.
Sure.
It existed as a spirit first. Someone listened for and was able to put that mentally into energy in motion, emotion, and bring other people or create the words, the items, the glasses, the windows, the microphones,
computers, cameras,
the clothing that we're wearing, all of that
everything.
started with spirit first. Someone being able to catch that, listen to it, feel it mentally, put energy into motion with it, then created the physical thing out of it. And so when we're having these negative, just to label it, if we haven't found our purpose, if we're in a distressed state, how do you address that? Because we're in a world right now.
We're in a very challenging world right now. And the bottom line is, if we have not really found our life purpose, if we have not, from a biblical perspective, knocked on the door of heaven, and knock
Yes.
and the door will open. Seek and you shall find. I mean, when I had my epiphany at age 28, and I read Florence Shinn book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, she asked two seminal questions. She asked a seminal question that would not unring. She said, if you could do anything in the world and there were no limitations, what would you do? What would you love to do the most? And I said, this is the most important question anyone will ever ask.
Yes.
And I said, I'm going to knock on the door of heaven until my knuckles are bloody. I'm going to know the answer to this question. And I've spent the past 30 years writing a book called The Power of Choice, Success in Your Life Purpose. We can talk about that later. But one of the key things to this whole paradigm, and the real paradigm shift, is shifting the vernacular of how we're co-creating. So again,
when we say vernacular, it's so, I want to just break what you're choosing to say to yourself as well as what you're choosing
Indeed.
to say to others.
Well, there are various forms of co-creativity. When you're thinking, that is a certain frequency
Yes.
of causation. When you speak that thought into form, you are accelerating matter, people, situations, circumstances into form. And when you write it down, that's a more concretized form of co-creating. That's why when you're engaged in a contract, people want to see what you have in writing, because it's delineating specifically what is your intent. So the real goal, the real key to this whole thing is that the ego mind, and I'm jumping just slightly ahead, the ego mind under no circumstances can ever use words of the divine. Never, ever, ever. So as an example, if you listen to the four predominant words that most people use to co-create their future existence, right? The ego mind, we know, only operates in two states, past and future. It never operates in the now. That's a
Yes.
dominion reserved for the God self, our truest self. So if as an example you use the word need,
Yes.
and we talked about this before, many people use that word need. I need to do that, or I should do that, or I ought to do that, right? If you look at the word need, is the word need closer to the state of abundance or lack? Which would you say?
I would say lack, for sure.
If something's closer to lack,
Yes.
is it closer by definition to love or fear?
By definition, fear.
If something's closer to the definition of fear, is it closer to responding or reacting?
Absolute reaction.
Exactly. So again, if I gave you a tomato seed and I asked you to plant it in fertile soil, is there ever any way out of that tomato seed that you could get a palm tree?
None.
Not. Same with
Yes.
your words. So if you're using words of fear, lack, and reaction, it means that the only future state of possibility you are creating is that of fear, lack, and reaction. This is different, however, from using a word like I choose, or I will, or I
Yes.
want, or I desire, or you could even say that's required. See, these are words that imbue and empower you with the realization that you are at cause. You are the heretic. Most enlightened people on the planet were called heretics.
Yes.
Because in Latin, that word actually means the person who knows that they can choose. Right? The person that knows that they can choose. So, and if you look at Joseph Campbell's In the Hero's Journey, where the hero has left the village of conformity in pursuit of slaying the dragon or the grail or whatever it is, there are many, many tests along the way that they go through until they come to the grand test. And this is the bridge of no return. And the real hero will cross that bridge of no return, and then they will turn to the bridge, burn the bridge down. This way there is no form of retreat. The only thing that they can focus on is what they do want, not what they don't want anymore, but what they do want. And we have co-created to date a world based in large part on what we don't want. In other words, the light switch is in the off position, and all that's required is that we turn it on. See, the Native Americans have a saying, they say, you have picked up the hot rock of pain and suffering.
Yes.
All that's required is that you turn your hand over and let it go.
And so, dear miracle makers, this is such, if you are experiencing right now a state of existence that's not comfortable or fun. You've used your words and you've used your thoughts to create this world that you're living in, and you can
Co-create it a different way.
Actively by giving yourself practices, music. You can, with very mindfulness, create awareness of how you created it and drop the hot rock.
Yeah, you can do the kahunas, the
Yes.
mystics of Hawaii. You can do the Ho'oponopono, and when you find yourself in a place of stuckness or suffering, and by the way,
Yes.
the leopard doesn't change its spots. The ego mind has one sole purpose, and that's to stick your hand to the fly paper and have you stuck there in a state of suffering. So if you see yourself in a state of suffering, you can simply do the Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you.
Another way to say that one is, I'm sorry, please release me. If it's your thoughts, you can let,
Sure,
please release me. I release you. Thank you. I love you.
Indeed.
The words
So that's in essence. This is like in essence hitting a reset button on the
Yes.
computer. Your consciousness is like a computer. And by the way, look, if you're not taking time to meditate in the morning or in the evening, in my book, there are many books. I'm sure you have a lovely meditation, but in my book, I have a meditation process. It's short, but if you're not, and I said, and if you're not doing that, at least in the morning or in the evening, realize this. Your mind is like an old Etch-a-Sketch. And for those of you who don't know this, it's a little box that you draw lines in the sand.
Yes.
Your ego mind is constantly writing on this. It's just full with nonsense. And until you take time to meditate at night and shake that Etch-a-Sketch clean, you're writing, you're overwriting, and eventually you'll get to a place where you're going to feel very sad, or you're going to feel confused, and you may feel depressed, and then you may feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
And these are all thoughts. Buddha said, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. King Solomon said, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And Emerson, the great philosopher, says, the ancestor of every action is thought. And if we are thinking in a mindful way, and I remind you, if I can remind the audience, there's a great book by Aldous Huxley called Island. It's about a group of enlightened people who leave the mainland because there are too many distractions, and they figure they can go to the island, be less distraction, and they can maintain that high frequency of enlightenment. And they get to the island, and they still find that there are lots of distractions there.
Yes.
And they gather and they say, well, what do we do, and how do we stay in this enlightened state? And somebody observed that there were thousands and thousands of parrots on the island. And says, well, look, we'll teach the parrots to say 2 words. The parrots will repeat the words 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when we listen to those words, we'll stay in that enlightened state. And the 2 words were pay attention. Pay attention. So I'd also like to suggest that in large part, we're not asking good questions. See, when Einstein would come home from school, his mother never said, did you make good grades?
Yes.
She said, did you ask good questions? And if we ask questions about, how are we the same? Or how can I be closer to this person? Or how can I, or what is my dream? Because if you knock with sincerity, what is the life mission that I'm here to fulfill? What is my role in helping to bring peace and love and kindness and compassion to the planet? I'm an ex-Fortune 500 sales executive. I used to race motocross. I was a bouncer, and I began to ask really
profound questions.
Deep questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? I'm not here to take up space, breathe oxygen, eat, have sex, or whatever.
Yes.
That's not it at all.
The question, Greg, I know you ask yourself is,
how is God calling me to serve?
How is God
how is life,
calling
or how the
me
Creator
to serve? And quite
Brilliant
often, I get so many requests from the work that I do, from the way people hire me and work with me. And so what would love do? What would unconditional unlimited love do? And I often speak to that question along with how may I serve? How am I being called to serve? And in the past, many years ago, my voice, inner voice, that inner space was constantly asking me, what's wrong with me? Why can't you get this right? What's happening? And not feeling stillness. And to me, that's the equivalent of...
It's the inner critic.
It's the inner critic. And
that can never be God's voice. Never, ever. Because God will only speak to you in kindness. And
only in
compassion,
kindness.
and great love.
And then
that's why when you pay attention to these words, if you hear the word, well, you need to do that, or you should do that. I mean, be very clear. This should, this could be like a red flag and a bell going ding, 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 information being directed from the ego mind. Do the exact opposite of whatever it's saying. And when you do, so in one of the chapters of the book, I talk about this in The Power of Choice, Success in Your Life Purpose. There's a chapter that talks about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And in that film, they're trying to get to the Grail. And the Germans have beat them there because they've stolen the map. Indy and them are watching from above. They, rockets tumble down and the Germans come and they capture them. And they basically say to Indy, you're going to go get the Grail, because they've watched, lots of soldiers come back decapitated because they don't know how to read the signs. So anyway, Indy says, I'm not going. You're out of your mind. They shoot his father, Sean Connery, in his stomach, and he says, your choice, drinks out of the Grails, lives. Doesn't, dies. So Indy is forced to go on this hero's journey. He's given back the map. He makes it past these blades that try to cut his head off. He has to step on certain stones that spell God in a particular way, and if you don't, you're impaled on these spears. And he gets to this last test. At the end of the tunnel, he can see the cave to the Grail. There's the Knight of the Round Table standing there.
Yes.
But it's hundreds of feet across, thousands of feet down. There's no way to jump across. There's no way to swing across. And in the map he sees a man literally walking in midair to the other side. And they yell from the other end, Andy, your father's dying. You've got to get the Grail. So he stands on the precipice of this huge crevice, thousands of feet down, hundreds of feet across. And you can see in his mind, oh my God, this is crazy. But I must take the leap of faith. And when he does, he steps onto an illusionary bridge that you could not have seen unless you first had the courage to take that leap of faith. And such is the case with all of us. We have been, I believe, each of us, I was, as a small child, I was given instructions about what to do, what my mission was. I didn't pay much attention to it, but it kept circling back. And I think all of us have at one time been whispered to or had some extraordinary experience that said, this is your mission.
You share that story on the Huffington Post. You're a contributor to the Huffington Post at 8 years old, hearing this mission. Will you share that briefly? And then we'll go back to this leap. The leap is the biggest thing. And for myself, in the past, when I got emotional, I'd have to find or make up a sad story that was happening in my life before I realized what an empath I was, or that I could pick up on the vibration collectively of what was happening. And to give space for that to go through an emotion. Last night when we got to the puppies and still being tearful, I could have both the egoic experience and the connected experience as well.
I call this the 3 Ds of self-actualization. The first is discernment. Being able to discriminate between words which are being communicated from the ego mind and those words which are communicated from the higher self. Again, the ego mind can never use words of the divine, ever. And the ego mind is only stuck with words of fear, lack, and reaction. That's the bottom line. Otherwise, if it could use either, you would be a crazy human being.
Yes.
And I have had people that I love dearly call this an insane asylum, where we become, we are attempting to become
Yes.
clear again. So once you mastered discernment, in other words, differentiating between words which are coming from the ego mind and versus the higher self or the God self, then you move into discipline. And discipline is trusting in the word. So the first is listening to the word. In other words, moving from hearing, which is passive, into a conscious listening to the word.
Yes.
And then in discipline, you trust in the word. And then the third D is discipleship. So in other words, listen, trust, act. Discipleship is acting on the word.
So another way to break that down is who you're being today determines what you're doing.
Or who you're actually being in the moment.
Who you're being in the moment right now. And you can decide that before. That's the power of choice.
Indeed.
For each of us, for me, it's really holding the space of being unlimited love. Being
That's a very curious thing. When I was age 18, I was racing motocross, and I wanted to become a top professional.
Yes.
And I was always asking these questions. Well, how do I do that? And I remember these words. It said, limitations are bound only by the mind. The mind is bound only by our perception of those limitations. And I said, wow, I don't even know where that came from. But I said, that is deep. And I said, in essence, that means if I could think it, I could do it. And I remember there's a great quote from Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Richard Bach's book, and it says, you're never being given a dream without also being given the power to make it come true.
Yes.
And I am just an example of a living proof. When you take that leap of faith as I did, when I read Florence Shen's book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, and I knocked on the door of heaven profusely.
Yes.
And it said music. I said, music? I said, I'm no musician. I said, what do I do with that? And I remember, well, what would I love to do relative to the subject of music? And I was absolutely enamored. I was in love with this, what I would call new age music, Mike Oldfield, Guitarro. I didn't know why. And I spent the next 11 years writing this thesis on this so I could have conversations with physicists and doctors and et cetera. And when I took that leap of faith, I was backstage with Guitarro.
Yes.
I was having dinner with Yanni. It was like, and I know that when you take that leap of faith, miracles do show up. That is the natural state. Miracles are the natural state. The ego mind's job is to only do one thing, is to cloak us, to keep us in Maya, as the Hindus would call it, the veil of separation between ourself and the divinity that we already are. So I would encourage everybody to, as an example, when you finish a relationship of some sort, oftentimes you're describing where you want to go from there, you will say, well, I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who's I can't trust, or all the things that you don't want.
Yes.
Stop that. Give pause and start co-creating from what you do want. Start stating what you do want. I want to be in a relationship with someone who's kind, that's loving, that's caring, that's authentic, that's generous of heart, that will receive and share, and et cetera, and model this around whatever it is you feel most in your heart, whether it be career or and really, what is your life mission? How do I live from my heart authentically in fulfilling my life mission as a contributor to a planet of greater love and compassion and caring, forgiveness?
It's such a beautiful thing. I came into the world in a third world country in Pakistan. My mom was very young, bombs going around. She had a book between her teeth under tables to make sure, nothing happened to the pregnancy. We live in such a place as this right now, and it's possible for each of us to activate the innate belief and knowing and listening to the voice and sound frequency of God or the mystery that created us. It comes from understanding with our whole heart that it's possible for there to be peace. If my mom went on to be in a world that and create peace, and all of her children are peacemakers out in the world, and that's what we're connected to and paying attention to with these profound questions. Simple, easy. Who am I being in the moment?
Well,
How can I be more of what I intend to create?
Exactly. It's a short distance to our own heart.
Yes.
But it can be a very long journey to get there.
And it's so important to hear there's two voices inside you at all times broadcasting.
Indeed.
One is the voice of fear.
And lack and reaction
And the other is very soft and very still.
Inspiring.
And
Always loving,
inspiring.
always kind.
And this beautiful space allows for love of absolute truth. Absolute truth cannot be cut. Just like that bridge that Indiana Jones was walking on. Once there was a connection, a knowing, this is what I must do.
This is what's required.
This is
Not
what's
must,
required.
But this is what's required.
Yes.
See, must still implies that you don't have choice.
Yes.
It's oppressive. So anytime you feel that energy of it's a have to,
yes.
rather than it's a choice. And look, there are things that, paying the bills, you could make that, well, darn, I have to do
Yes.
that. Or you could also make it like, gosh, I'm so overjoyed that I have the money to pay the bill and to pay for this service that is really enriching my life.
Yes.
So it's all on how you turn the switch. Do you keep the switch in the off position or turn the switch to the on position and look at it from a 5-mile perspective of love? See, the ego mind works like how we trap monkeys. And the way we trap monkeys is they find a tree where monkeys hang out, and they know that there are nuts that the monkeys like. So they drill a hole at the bottom of the tree. They put a little pouch at the back of the hole. They put nuts that the monkeys like to eat there. The monkeys smell the nuts. They come down. They got to have the nuts, and I mean that literally and metaphorically. They got to have the nuts. So the first thing they do is they jam their hand in the hole to grab the nuts.
Yes.
Now, when they try to pull their hand out, their fist is too big, and it won't make it out of the hole. And they are not letting go of the nuts.
Yes.
I mean
They
that literally and
finally have
metaphorically.
what they want. Yes.
Right, literally and metaphorically. So they're not letting go of the nuts. So the person who's trying to capture the monkey just comes up, puts a noose around the monkey's neck, and the monkey goes, ooh, I'm in trouble. He lets go of the nuts, pulls his hand out of the hole, and now the monkey is the slave. And that's the way the ego mind works. So pay attention to your monkey mind, thoughts which are constantly flickering between love and fear, and learn how to move from a tightrope, if you will, of awareness where you're looking to keep your balance. And the more you do that and consistently choose in the pathway of the intuitive self and discriminate in that level, then the tightrope now becomes a 2x4.
Yes.
Now the 2x4 becomes a sidewalk, and now the sidewalk becomes a street, and you're able to walk with ease. So you transition from the conscious mind, the monkey mind, into the intuitive mind, and beyond that, the ultimate mind that state you want to be in is the knowing mind, because in that realm there's no ambivalence. It's just information is so. And the more and more you choose that path of following information that's so, you will find that miracles are a moment by moment occurrence.
It's such a gift. That's what we teach. We teach making miracles to our groups and to those that come into our lives.
And by the way, I do want to state,
yes,
I have, anyone that looks at our site, I have pulled off stuff that the world's experts say could never be done.
Yes.
And I promise you this, be clear that once you launch onto this path of the hero's journey, the universe is not going to throw rose petals at your feet.
Yes.
You may throw the kitchen sink at you, but your job is to persevere. And when you do persevere, the miracle will always show up. You will always be given signs.
Pay attention to
Pay
what
attention.
you want. And I threw so many wishes. Is wishes the correct? Anyway, so many wishes out there. And so did you make a peace dove symbol? Was that your symbol?
Well, we did. I had envisioned several initiatives. You asked me about the story when I was a little boy.
Yes.
So my father was an aerospace engineer, and my dad is the guy that ran the aerospace program for TRW in Cape Canaveral. My dad was the physicist who bored the hole in the Yucca Mountain sites where they're going to store nuclear waste.
Yes.
And my dad is a guy that helped to pioneer fracking. They didn't know, I think, at the time the dangers. My dad was a good man, but we moved from Los Angeles to Friendswood, Texas, and I was obsessed with playing football. And at age 8, and one day at recess, I was running the football, and no one could tackle me. I wasn't especially big, but I was very agile, and I made it across our little goal line, and I saw everything stop, like the Matrix stop. I saw everything 360 above, below simultaneously, and I had a sense that I was to play a role somehow in bringing peace to the planet. And then the next thing I know, I appeared to be multiple miles in the sky, free-falling like a parachutist into what I now know as Manger Square, Bethlehem.
Yes.
And I didn't know where that place was from Adam. So when I eventually got into working in Palestine, and I am working in this region of the world because it is the birthplace of the 3 major monotheistic religions. This is, I'll just say de facto, this is the birthplace of insanity, where the paradigm of I have the right God, so you don't, so I'm good, and you're bad, and I'm righteous, and you're evil, and once I have you at evil, I go into the village, murder men, rape women, kill babies, burn village down, and go home and sleep like a baby because God said this was okay, and this is insanity.
Yes.
And so I had envisioned several initiatives there. We started out with visions of peace, and I took a surgical team to Hebron in Palestine. We delivered 40 free cataract surgeries in a 2-day period of time, almost $500,000 in cataract surgeries. Then the next initiative we did was in Jericho, and we did an image called Love All, and we brought thousand. We brought 1,000 Palestinian refugee children to the base of the Mount of Temptation in Jericho. We had them, my friend and I, John Quigley, we had them form the image of the Picasso peace dove. We spelled the words Love All, spelled the word love in Arabic. We filmed the image aerially. A year later, out of the blue, I got a call, said this was identified as one of the 49 most iconic images in the history of the UN out of 800,000 photos. And then a month later, on Christmas Day in Bethlehem, we did a large-scale concert out to 80 million homes with the lead singer, Fox Lima from Enigma, and Gary Nicholson, Grammy-winning Texas Hall of Fame singer-songwriter, and then Hani Nasser and Joanne Shenandoah, and we had Peter Joseph we did a 6-minute video. It showed how Jesus and Buddha and Krishna, Muhammad were all saying the same thing: just be loving,
Yes.
And that went out to 80 million homes worldwide from Bethlehem on Christmas Day. Not one person in Palestine ever censored anything that we said. And then the following year, we did an image called Free All, where we had several hundred Palestinian Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts put their paint-covered hands on the dividing wall in Bethlehem that marks the original road into Bethlehem that's under Israeli control. And we wanted to create a visual plea to the world to bring the wall down. We had the rest of the kids spell the words Free All, and we filmed that aerially. And then we did a concert in 2013 called Forgive All. And then this album here is To Unite All. So in other words, love all, free all, forgive all, to unite all. And this album you can find. I mean, there are amazing musicians on this. Peter Gabriel, Roger Waters, Philip Lawrence from the group Bruno Mars did an original song for the album. It's just
beautiful.
Beautiful song. Stuart Copeland from The Police. Ricky Cage helped me produce this album, and
It's such a brilliant album,
Oh,
and
thanks.
the image, the cards were sent out by the UN. When you bought UN holiday cards, you got your images, and so you are a miracle for me. I'd set that intention because I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen to be part of this. Kids that may not ever fly on planes or have that experience to know it, to be part of something and so valued, and their images captured in order to bring love for all, peace for all.
Fritz, my good friend Fritz and Sammy, and in the Middle East. I mean, and Sammy Abudai with the could have never happened without their great hearts and their great souls pushing and allowing this, creating the space for this to occur. I mean, we didn't even know. I mean, it was a year later. Fritz Frohlock, was I call him like a secret agent for the UN. He helped really to strategically put this together. He called me one morning early, like 3 a.m. He said, "Steve, you won't even believe it. They just
picked that image
as one of the most iconic image." And I was like, wow. I knew that it would. I felt, I hoped that it would touch people. And these children are so precious. I mean, this is, we can't allow another country to build a 30-foot prison wall around another country. It's not acceptable.
Yes.
I'm sorry. As a man, that wall is coming down. It must. Period.
Do you believe peace is possible?
Indeed. It begins simply with each of us finding peace within ourselves. We're at war with the world.
Yes.
We're at war with ourselves when we are not clear about what our life mission is.
And your dear miracle maker, there is a life mission inside of you, and listen to that calling. The tomato seed will not produce a pineapple tree.
Palm tree, huh?
Or a palm tree.
Yeah.
And it's so, so beautiful. All of it lives within yourself. And by paying attention, what lights you up? What brings you joy? What contributes to those around you such that they're paying attention to you more because you're all lit up? The seed, the dreams, none of it is too big. Whatever you're dreaming, it's not too big. When you start paying attention and letting go of the rocks, the burning rocks that you're holding, other people's opinion is a burning rock.
Your own opinion that you're not worthy.
Yeah,
Is
it's a
a
very
rock.
searing rock. Yeah,
Is a
yeah.
searing rock.
Yeah,
And
because be very clear. The ego mind will say, "Look, you don't want to turn loose of that hot rock.
Yes.
It's burning the heck out of you. You don't want to turn loose of that. You could get a hotter rock, couldn't you?"
Yes.
And you go, "Gosh, thank you for looking out for me." It'll
Yes.
never say, "If you let go of that hot rock, you're done."
Yes.
It'll never say, because once you learn the lesson, you don't have to repeat it.
Hugs to you, hugs to you. We could hear you all day.
I'm going to listen to this one multiple times, Miracle Makers. There was so many gems, and really the code to
And,
making miracles is available in this conversation. Thank you
This
so
is
much
worth
for all you
seeing
shared.
as well online on YouTube. If you're listening to this in podcast, there are so many links and so many images that are engineered. Thank you so much for putting those up.
And if I could say,
Sure.
please support us. Buy an album. Buy
Buy
a song.
an album. It's so important to unite all.
This album is gorgeous. Every single song has been handpicked or been delivered by a great musician like Philip Lawrence. I mean, such a beautiful and kind soul.
An amazing being. Peter Gabriel, Roger Waters. The energy that's in here is such love. Ricky Byers-Beckwith is in this as well.
Yeah, she is.
She is. This is so beautiful. Thank you so much. To unite all, that's where we all want you to go. Get a song. Support this beautiful, beautiful peace in Gaza and the Middle East.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen,
And
amen.
so
Thank
it
you,
is.
Miracle Makers.
The past is history, the future mystery.